Professor Goodwin, let me begin with you in that point that the vice president made about after being victimized in rape and incest or incest, the next decision you make about your body is not yours, she said in such powerful terms. And you've written about your own experience in this way. What is that like for women and girls when they find themselves in that situation, and now with these new laws saying you don't get to make any decision now?
First, Lawrence, it's good to be back on with you, and thank you for prioritizing a discussion about this. Well, it's horrific, and as the vice president mentioned, it is immoral. Under no circumstance does the state commission one's body or force a person's body, save in these instances, to do something on its behalf. We don't have a draft in the United States. The United States will not force young men to use their bodies in service to defend this nation. And yet you find in this circumstance that we don't force people to become police officers, firefighters, even though those are things that help people, save people's lives. But in this instance, in the wake of something absolutely cruel, absolutely violent, horrific, something that is spirit murder, you would have state lawmakers who are now forcing girls as young as 9, 10 years old to carry pregnancies to term unless they flee the states in which they live, where there are abortion bans, to try to get to another state to freedom. As I've said before, this strikes one right at the heart of something that is like slavery. It is when the state says that others may take control over your body, giving you no comfort to your own, giving you no autonomy to your own. And shortly after the Dobbs decision, we did see a 10-year-old girl who fled one state to try to get to the other such that she would be able to terminate that pregnancy. And let's be clear, it's something we've talked about on your show, is that in the backdrop of this, and the vice president spoke about this today, which is that the U.S. is the deadliest place in all of the industrialized world to be pregnant. As a national matter, you're 14 times more likely to die by carrying a pregnancy to term in the United States than having an abortion. So it is not only cruel and vicious, but it also is an equivalent to the state proposing a death sentence. And that's not hyperbole. And let me just say, it comes from the United States Supreme Court in its Whole Woman's Health v. Hellerstedt decision in 2016, where we have that figure that a woman is 14 times more likely to die carrying a pregnancy to term than having an abortion.
Cecile Richards, you have been on the crusade for abortion rights for so long now. I'm wondering what it means to you in this situation now to have a vice president of the United States, to have a woman vice president of the United States in her way leading this dialogue.
Well, I'm so proud of Vice President Harris and so grateful that she is leading us. And it's an interesting time. I want to say something about what Michelle just said. It's as if in 19 states in America, once you are pregnant, you become a ward of the state. You essentially lose your rights. And that is something that is struck the hearts of, I think, everyone in America. And so what I guess I do want to say on this anniversary is coming up to a year of having lost this right. The one thing I have learned is just how united this country is on the issue of abortion. And I think to the shock and dismay of a lot of people who've been pushing for these bans, but Republicans, independents, Democrats, people have voted against and voted for abortion rights from Kansas all across the country. And so I think what we're seeing now is just, it is universal. People do not want the state to make these decisions for people. They're hearing the stories that you and others have been lifting up so people actually know the impact. And in fact, it's interesting since the Supreme Court said they wanted this to be a states' rights issue until they found out that no states want abortion banned. And so now, of course, the Republicans are busy trying to change the rules of voting and trying to change our ability to vote on these kinds of issues. So I feel like we are hearing from the American people, this is not right. This is not what they want. And I think that's going to only continue to grow.
Professor, as a law professor, when you're teaching now about the Supreme Court and the decision-making process of the Supreme Court, to see it become something where decisions after 50 years to this court have no meaning at all. It's not clear to me how law professors can explain the current Supreme Court.
Well, let's be clear that the American public has lost confidence in the Supreme Court. It has the lowest approval rating since there have been surveys about how the American public think about the Supreme Court and whether they trust the Supreme Court. In many different ways, we are learning about justices and their various dealings with strike at the heart of ethics. But as a general matter, what you're talking about is this very unique space, the Supreme Court carving out that 50 years after Roe v. Wade, that the Supreme Court would take in this very direct domain, just focus on abortion and overturn reproductive rights while holding all other things to be steady. You know, the Supreme Court has respected precedent for some time now. Of course, there are reasons why one would, like Brown v. Board of Education, get rid of laws that would say that we are separate and we can't be equal. But this really is a challenging time.